showed him a picture of the last time I was up here for a Q&A. It was me and Bob Roop and Chris Rose and Kevin Sullivan. Is my mic on? How about now?
Check, you hear us? Mic check?
Test 1, 2. Or back in the days, you say, "Is this thing on?" I thought you did this.
So tell your stories, inspirational stories about Kevin.
Oh. I hate looking at pictures on my phone, but I was wanting to show them the picture. We were sitting up here, but before I saw Kevin Sullivan walk in, and he was almost half sideways like this, walking. And when we went to sit down, I was looking at the way he was leaning, and I go, I don't want to sit down that side of him. So I passed Briscoe real quick and got on the other side of him. And Kevin was leaning right, can you hear him? Yeah, he was like this. And Jerry Briscoe, right? He's like this. And all of a sudden I feel somebody tapping me on the shoulder, and it's Briscoe. He's like this. And he's looking at me going, "Help, help." Kevin had fallen asleep on his shoulder there in the Q&A. Bless his heart. Rest in peace, Kevin.
Well, thank you all for being here.
Are you going to read that whole thing?
No, this isn't a speech, it's just notes.
Okay.
Remember, no. Everybody knows the Fabulous Ones, the music videos, I mean, the trends they started. But historically, for those of you that don't, I mean, I knew it, we were together in the AWA. It all started in 1982. In the Continental Wrestling Association, Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler decided to team up Steve and Stan and use music videos. I mean, everybody knows Sharp Dressed Man, Everybody Wants You. And it was kind of the Jackie Fargo strut that you incorporated. So I was always curious, and Jackie was such a legend around. Was he involved? Did the promoters or did you guys talk to Jackie, kind of get permission to, or did, it was just something that happened?
We actually went over to Jackie's house and met him. He had to sort of approve of us and kind of give us his blessing, because the Fabulous Fargos were such a big tag team in that area, back in the day, that he wanted to make sure that he was going to believe in the two guys who were going to take his legacy and continue on with it. So we went by there and sat down with him and talked to him and stuff, and we all hit it off, very, very well. And he actually showed us how to do his Fargo strut, and you see a lot of guys doing it now, but he was the originator of that Fargo strut. That's why it's called the Fargo strut, obviously. But he showed us how to do it, and we talked about a lot of things, what his mindset was when he wrestled. And so it was kind of passing of the torch, and he gave us a full validation and certification to be, the Fabulous Ones.
Now, I've got to ask this, given what we went through getting ready for the photo ops, did you guys like the addition of the suspenders, the bow ties, the sequins? I mean, were you good with that image?
Yes. Hey, as long as I wasn't portrayed as a fag, I was open for anything. I mean, just tell me what you want me to be. Because when you're working for a company, it's just the same as if you worked at McDonald's. When I ran FCW and I was the head of the developmental, I tell them, I say, you might not like things you're going to do in a business, but if you worked at McDonald's and they told you to put 2 pickles on that hamburger, and then you decide you like pickles and you put 5 on a hamburger, and somebody comes back and says, hey, I had 5 pickles on my hamburger. It was delicious. And you think, well, you're over. The minute the guy walks away, he said, hey, you're fired. 2 pickles only. You work for somebody, you do what you're told. You know, I had a lot of people say, well, how come you didn't have any more belts or anything? Why didn't you get anything as Skinner in WWF? I said, if I would have been running the show, I'd have beat Hogan when I walked in as Skinner. I'd have never lost. Well, you're not in control of what you do. But, you know, I just like riding the stand. To me, 90% of it is, can you get along with the guy you're partners with? Because you're going to see him more, you're going to see your family. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's a whole lot better. I thought you were gonna start to give that one-word answer and then just be quiet.
I'm freezing. Okay, I'm looking at this dude with his sweatshirt.
Yeah. Now, I know the original plan to team you up, that you were gonna be heels. They were gonna turn you heel, right?
No, I don't think that was ever the plan.
I've read that, but I don't recall Jerry ever telling us that it was going to be.
No, because Jackie Fargo was the biggest baby face in Tennessee, so they wouldn't have started us off as heels. When we went to AWA, Vern was like way out there. He was an old guy. He was just way out there. And he couldn't figure out if we were heels or baby faces. He must have asked us 10 times while we were working, you guys heels or baby faces? Or whatever you want us to be. So.
Now, it was really quick, but you guys, within the first year, you won your first title. It was the Southern Tag Team Championship. You beat Bobby Eaton and Sweet Brown Sugar, who you know is Coco Beware. Were you surprised you got over in your work that you won a title that quickly?
No. Nothing really surprises you. I mean, you were glad because you knew you were going to the top of the pile. And winning titles and things like that was just part of building. It built you, got your credibility, so you meant something against opponents. So it wasn't surprising or anything like that because I don't know how to explain it, but the wrestling business, it's a business. And when I started in Florida, it was like being a magician. It was the same comparison. People in the audience knew it wasn't real, but they couldn't figure it out. Because some matches looked better than the others and some were more real. But it's like magic. You know, you go to Las Vegas and a guy will have an elephant come out of a tiger's ass. And you're going, wonder how he did that? It's the same thing in the wrestling business. And they're sitting there and they're watching. In Florida, we were brain, maybe mindset to really kayfabe. I mean, you know, nobody was smart. When we first started, they wouldn't smarten you up for 6 months. They'd take you to the sportatorium and it was part of your initiation. And they'd beat you up. And not punch you in the face, don't get me wrong, but they'd stretch you over and over. We'd do a ton of exercises. And I know I'm making mine too long, but anyway, I was the son of a prisoner of war, so the only one at home was my mom. And I'd come home and I'd have mat burns on my face, my elbows, my knees, and she'd say, honey, I thought wrestling was fake. And I said, Mom, so did I. But whatever the hell I'm learning is not what I watched on TV. And so I was confused, but then it was a way to get you to protect the business. In other words, you go through that for 6 months and somebody walks up to you at a bar and says, you're one of the wrestlers, it's all fake. That guy that we work for would want you to beat him up, or at least fight somebody over it. So it's just a different mindset.
All right, Steve, let me ask you, and you referenced it, that sometimes matches were much better than others, sometimes they had magic. You guys had that pretty brutal tag team feud with the Sheepburners. And the amazing thing that when they left, you left, that same feud lasted and went into a number of different promotions. What made that feud, what gave it the magic that it lasted and other promoters wanted to use the same feud?
Putting asses in seats. it's all based around what your experience so far as your drawing ability. If it's successful in Tennessee, you can bet it's going to be successful in Georgia, it's going to be successful in the Carolinas, because it's a proven thing. It's just putting it together. So it's always just by reference. I mean, you know, it's not the magic of the match. It's the idea that the four of us all had passion for the wrestling business. And when I say passion, it means we didn't worry about cutting, getting blades, and cutting ourselves 5-6 nights a week because we were really into what we were doing. And when you can wrestle other guys that are like that, then it's not really magic. It's just like, a lot of people will say to me, well, isn't that wrestling fake? I said, yeah, but not everybody's good at it. Are you falling asleep? Yeah, it's probably me. I talk too much. Okay.
Oh.
Ask Dan a question.
Oh, okay, talking about the same match feud with the sheep herder. When the longer you wrestle each other and have matches together, I mean, I've been, you know, in locker rooms where, you know, for a 15-minute match, guys might spend 25 minutes going over it ahead of time. Does it get to a point where you literally just kind of play off one another? You don't go over it as much because you know whatever happens, you've worked together enough where it'll be good and you'll just play off one another?
Well, the fact of the matter is, back when we wrestled in the old days, I mean, you didn't go over your matches. That's the way it was. You went out there and you played off each other. You felt not only your opponents, but you played to the audience. Some audiences like a very rough match, a lot of, you know, blood and guts, and some audiences prefer, like the smaller spot shows, prefer a little bit of comedy. So you gotta feel the crowd out. And as far as your opponents, I mean, Steve and I had very, very brutal matches with not only the sheep herders, but the assassins.
Moondogs?
Moondogs, yeah, with the Bones, you know, Rex and Spot, the Moondogs. Jimmy Hart had a group, the New York Dolls, which had Troy Graham and the late Richard Raw. So, but we had, see, the Fabs kind of appealed to two distinct genres. We sort of appealed to the female crowd by doing those music videos and trying to be the somewhat pretty boys, but that would make the male fans not like you. But Jerry Jarrett was smart enough to have us be very, very rugged and get out there and fight and use furniture and get out there and bleed and do some hard ways. So we appealed to the female crowd, but we also appealed to the male crowd that thought, you know what, these guys are kind of pretty boys, but I tell you what, they'll get out there and fight. So we had the kind of the best of both worlds, and Jerry Jarrett did that for us.
Now, in '84, when you came to the AWA, and I was there ahead, talking about Vern, we started on TV playing all those music videos from you guys. So it was, the fans couldn't wait, and I remember that first match when you came to the St. Paul Civic Center, that the expectations the fans had, that very first match, you exceeded them. And I think in part was what you talked about. There hadn't been a lot of teams that had the physical nature combining with high-flying teamwork. I mean, you guys were in and out of the ring so much, but you combine that, and I mean, from that moment, you guys in the AWA were, I mean, they couldn't get enough of you.
Well, Vern, I think, in all, you know, due respect to Vern, he didn't really know how to promote us. He was, you know, having us go out there and do promos and interviews and, like, you know, brag about partying with Hollywood stars and that we were doing this and we were doing that. Well, that really turns you evil. You can't go out there and do that, you know. Tennessee was a whole lot different because, as I said a little earlier, we had the Grace and the Jackie Fargo, you know, he said that these guys are my boys. So that kind of got us over already. We went up to Minneapolis with the AWA and Vern. You know, people didn't know who Jackie Fargo was, and Vern kind of turned us heel. And so we were kind of in a kind of great area there for a while.
Now, you guys leading up to the AWA, I mean, you had great matches with Heenan, Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens, and I mean, everybody was just waiting for the inevitable match with the Road Warriors. I mean, they had the straps, and you know, they were the title holders, and everybody, I mean, you know, myself and everybody else was expecting kind of a long, great run between you guys and the Road Warriors, and it suddenly didn't work out, and kind of under, I don't want to say mysterious, but not really explained, you guys kind of left the territory. What transpired, you know, what's kind of open the can.
I'm from Florida, and when it's snowing in May, I don't want to be there. It was pretty simple for me. Stan was having a great time. He was, I'm not going to use that. He was dating Gagne's daughter. I mean, you know, so we had it in the bag, but it was just too cold. I had 2 brand new babies, and I'd come home, get off the road, I'd come home, and I'm looking in the front, and there's all these kids playing, and I'd say to my wife, which 2 are ours? Because the only thing showing was their little eyeballs, you know, and if you didn't know what color they had on when they went out, you didn't recognize them. And it was just overwhelming to me. But a lot of things happen in territories that after you've got a long run in a lot of different territories, you smarten up. You watch what other people do, and then you make decisions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Actually, for us, we were making more money than we'd ever made. But at the same time, I was getting homesick. I couldn't stand the cold. Stan was partying every night. Stan was partying every night because the people in Minneapolis are used to being in bars all the time. And he was a good dancer. He could always pick up a girl. I can't dance at all, so I kind of like lean on the bar. So we were just talking, he invited us to go up to the lounge, and neither one of us drink now, so we're really dragging a bar. Anyway.
And for me, it was really crushing because Stan was my neighbor. He just lived 3 doors down, so I got to see him all the time. But you know, we're talking, we got, you know, a lot of history between us. But when you've got a question, just, you know, raise your hand, because it's a Q&A, and you know, I don't know certainly all the questions that you might want, you know, to hear. So anytime, just, you know, raise your hand and they'll take whatever question. But you know, earlier, Steve, you mentioned people said, how come you didn't have a lot of belts or this or that? When you left the AWA, you went back to Memphis and you held that tag team title 15 times.
Couldn't find nobody to drop it to. No, but that's a lot of times, that's the way fans will judge how good you are. Oh, well, you never held a title. I held a few, but then maybe it's because I brought them back from the ring for somebody else.
I'll tell you,
You don't have the option to pick when you're going to be the champion. I mean, in my home, you'd think after 44 years in the wrestling business, I would have stuff displayed all over my house. There's not one thing in my house that relates to wrestling. My wife hates wrestling with a passion, and let me tell you, she hates this team right here worse than any. Because we were young, we were looked like Chippendale dancers. We were, you know, may as well have been male strippers. And every time Sharp Dressed Man comes on the radio in my truck, if she's sitting beside me, I can feel the heat. I'm praying, dear Lord, break my radio right now. I mean, and I listen to what's considered oldies music. I love Creed's Clearwater Revival in that era because I understand the words. But damned if ZZ Top doesn't come in like about every 50 minutes or so, and I'm going, oh no, not that song. Or Everybody Wants You by Billy Squire. What a song. People have great memories. Well, I don't. My wife looks at me, she goes, I hate that song. So she loves Skinner. That was perfect husband for her. A homeless alligator poacher from the Everglades. Chewing a big mouthful of licorice. She goes, you're my man now. I was cool with that too.
Speaking of Billy Squire, that song I came up with as the Fab's theme song, but I heard that song originally riding in Terry Taylor's Volkswagen Jetta, and he played his music. He had a really good stereo system. He played his songs. I was more of a really oldies guy. I like 50s and 60s stuff, but I heard that song and it had a very catchy beat to it. So when Jerry Jarrett put me and Steve together as the Fabs, I suggested using that song. That's how that came up.
So see, it's Stan's fault.
No, Stan picked out that. He picked out Michael Jackson, Beat It, some other things. We wrote Motorcycles in one. We did. But Stan always picked the music. Stan could have been a radio disc jockey. He would turn on his radio disc jockey voice for me every once in a while and be going down the road. But the best part about that era was CB radios. I can't tell you how many stories I could tell about the most fun we had on our trips was talking on CB radios. Especially if we knew somebody didn't have one, like Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor would be in front of us about maybe 2 or 3 cars, a couple hundred yards, and he'd be behind an 18-wheeler. And one of us, probably Stan, I was really a nice guy, but he'd say, hey, brake on that 18-wheeler in front of this Cadillac. And the guy come back to him and says, get that piece of shit out of the way. And the guy starts slamming on the brakes. Terry Taylor didn't even have a CB radio. So it was constant things we did. Stan can tell you a really good story that we did when a guy was broke down on the side of the road and a guy had a camper and he was a member of a Good Sam Club. And he was, I can't tell that story.
Well, you can't tell that story.
I just looked around and thought,
I'll tell you this one though. You remember a wrestler named Silo Sam? Yeah, he was about 7 feet tall. He wore the bib overall, sort of the Cloudboy Frazier style gimmick. Well, he drove a 1973 Cadillac Eldorado. I guess he weighed 400 pounds, but the springs were all broken and set real low. So it's sort of like a low rider. We were going from Nashville to Memphis, I-40 West, and I saw his blue Cadillac up ahead. He was behind the truck. And Steve looked at me, and I looked at him. And okay, let's get him. So I got on CBS and said, hey, how about that yellow 18-wheeler? That yellow driver up there at the mile marker 102, come back. And I said, yes, sir, go ahead. And I said, I don't guess you looked in your rearview mirror, because if you did, you'd see one big, tough son of a bitch driving a blue Cadillac Eldorado. You see me? I said, yeah, yes, sir, I see it. I said, well, you better get that piece of crap truck out of my way, because I'm ready to come through, brother. And about that time, Sam scratched his head, and I said, look at my bicep. You must be real tough. Why don't you come on around? I'm gonna get over here, come on around. I said, well, you're making a good decision, because I will beat the living starch out of you if I don't. Just going on and on. So the truck kind of pulled over, and Silo Sam, he was driving around past the guy, and he didn't know what's going on. He didn't got a CB radio. Well, about that time, he got about halfway up. Truck driver ran him off into the median, and he's going through. He couldn't be killed. Thank God he didn't. But that's the kind of stuff that we would do back then. Think it's funny as hell.
A whole new side to the fabulous one.
really funny stuff. Really funny stuff.
do you guys ever watch, today's wrestling, but even, 2000s wrestling? When you started, there were hardly, not forget music videos, there were hardly ever any vignettes really done. And you guys kind of started it all, where, almost every promotion started imitating it, then it spun into, not music, but the vignettes with The Undertaker. Do you ever sit back and see those and think to yourself, we kind of started all that?
No. No, I don't personally stand by it, but when I watch now, I have to give credit where credit's due. They have such large attendance. That's really what it's about, and people making money. So whatever's right is right now. But this is the way I compare wrestling. I compare it to action movies. When I was a young guy, Clint Eastwood was like one of my hero action figure guys, and Charles Bronson. Even before that, it was John Wayne. The movies would be the beginning. They would establish how tough the babyface is, like Clint Eastwood or Charles Bronson. Then he'd have one run-in with one heel, and he'd chase him the whole movie, and half the time didn't even kill him. Okay, fast forward, now Keanu Reeves, John Wick, I watch and count how many people he kills. I got a little piece of paper, and I'm going like this. That's 45 in the first segment. But that's how it's changed. The business has evolved into a new business. Ken said about talking about the matches. Stan and I were in separate dressing rooms from our opponents 90% of the time. The referee would bring us our finish. And we didn't trust some referees. We'd go like, we're really doing that? Wait a minute, you sure we're getting beat? But he'd bring over 3 finishes at one time, and he might leave out part of our finish. Every time we'd come to the center of the ring to get checked, we'd go, you guys get the same finish we got? We wanted to just make sure. So there was no communication. When I was an agent in the WWE for 6 years, I'd get a match at a production meeting right after lunch for Monday Night Raw, WrestleMania, whatever it is, and I'd go to the talent. They said, you're wrestling here. We want 6 minutes TV time. You're over. I'll see you in about an hour. I'd come back and they're like still talking about the match. And I'd say, what the hell are y'all talking about? It's only 6 minutes. So we want to get in all these spots. And they're trying to cram 30 minutes worth of a match in a 6-minute match. Now, I don't know about Stan, but I'm positive I could never be a worker. Because I can't do a moonsault. I can't even do a freaking somersault. So 90% of the matches I see, they're coming off the top, they're diving through the ropes, they're doing something acrobatic that to us was a high-risk move. But we're working 7 nights a week, you don't want to risk getting hurt just to impress an audience, and then your next night you're not working again. So it's changed. The communication, they talk about those matches, they talk about the interviews. If you were to tell us we had to go out and do a 20-minute interview on a live Monday Night Raw, I'd go, well, what the hell are we going to talk about? And if they'd have told us to memorize it, I really wasn't that good in school. My memorization is probably about that long. And so it'd be impossible. I give credit to the young talent because they're athletic, but they're also versatile. And they're trying to overcome what people have already seen. When you step in front of an audience, you have to remember some of those people are there for the very first time. But probably 75% have been coming since they were like maybe 20 years of life. So they're comparing you to what they've seen before. So it's a tough business for these young people.
Steve, let me ask you, and then we'll kind of talk about, and when I talked to Stan today, his answer surprised me. But about how you guys kind of ended the fabulous runs. But let me ask you this, just based on what you talked about. All the times like we did interviews, we never rehearsed anything. It was always, I'd start and the interview would go. And today, and I've talked to, a few current stars, that they have an interview and they damn near get a script and have to memorize everything. But like, even to me, sometimes I'll watch and it seems like they're out there doing the interview. There's no passion in it because they're trying so hard to remember what they're supposed to say.
Yes, it's not ad lib. There's some really creative guys. I mean, a lot of you might not like this guy, a lot of you might like him, but CM Punk, that guy can talk right off the cuff. And he can go toe to toe with The Rock. And to me, that's impressive. But there's not that many guys that can do that. I got asked a question, I want to say since I've been here, if I ever saw somebody come through FCW, the developmental, did you ever see anybody that stood out that you said, when they walked through the door, you said, that guy's got potential, he's going to make money? I only had one guy. And I ran through 1,800 people in 6 years. And I can't tell you how many second generation wrestlers. But the only one that stuck out was Roman Reigns. And he wasn't really very good when he started because he was a very nice and humble guy. He was a second generation wrestler, but he looked like a movie star to me. I mean, he had that look that, man, that's not a normal look. You look cool, man. You got a cool look. And he's done phenomenal. But his name's Joe. And of course, we didn't give him the name Roman Reigns until he was ready to go. But at the same time, he was the nicest kid. I wanted to tell him, you're too much like Bobby Eaton. To me, Bobby Eaton was the nicest guy in the wrestling business. But this is not a business for nice people. You gotta be a dog-eating dog. Because the reality is, we're playing a game of king on the mountain. And to get to the top of the mountain, you gotta claw your way up, push people out of the way, pull them down by the leg, and then when you get there, then it's even worse when you get to the top because everybody wants to knock you off. They all want your spot. Prime example is Hulk Hogan. There's so much controversy about him right now. I grew up with him. I've known him longer than anybody in the business. I've known him 60 years. I met him when I was 13 and he was 10. We went to the same junior high, the same high school, grew up together. I'd have never thought that he was going to get to the level he is at. But there I hear people say, well, he did this or he did that. But to me, everybody's human. We all make mistakes. I mean, it's terrible. You can't erase your mistakes, but sometimes they stick with you. And so, anyway, God rest his soul.
One of the best segues ever unknowing. You mentioned beautiful Bobby Eaton, and he was probably the nicest guy ever.
Right.
In March '87, Dennis Cadre suddenly left Midnight Express. Dusty called you, and you agreed to join Bobby Eaton as the new Midnight Express. And I asked you, because I didn't really know the answer, if that was a decision you made, if it was a joint decision, but you kind of shed light that really you guys had already made the decision, and luckily for you, you got that call.
Yeah, I was at the right place at the right time. We had gone to the AWA, we've been talking extensively about today, but when we left there, we went back to Jerry Jarrett's Tennessee territory, hoping to rekindle what we had, but they got kind of mad at us when we first left because they had even created us, and we wanted to go and be on a national scene instead of a regional scene. So they pretty much buried us while we were gone. So when we came back, we just couldn't rekindle that same flame. We weren't drawing the same kind of people, same kind of crowds that we had there. So we stayed there a fairly short time, and then we decided we'd go to Florida as the Fabulous Ones. Well, Florida at that time, it was not drawing very well at all, and we weren't making very, very good money. And Steve was married, still married, of course, at the time. Steve's father-in-law was a very successful real estate broker in the Tampa area. Steve came to me one night saying, we're not doing too good here. He said, I'm thinking about if you don't have a problem with it, going into the real estate business with my father-in-law. And I gave him my blessing. I said, absolutely. If you can do better than that than we are here, we're not doing very good. I said, go for it, man. So Steve left the tag team and went to the real estate business and did very well. Well, for about 4 weeks there, I was like a fish out of water because I've been a tag team wrestler for a long time, and the money was bad. And now I was in singles, and I was being dropped down too. So I was thinking, you got to make a move here. You got to leave here. And about that time, one day, Saturday at TV, J.J. Dillon approached me and said, Dusty Rhodes wants you to give him a call. He's in Charlotte. And I said, really? I said, you know what it's about? I said, just call Dusty. He'll explain it all to you. So I called Dusty, and they flew me up from Tampa to Charlotte. Bob Eaton picked me up at the airport there, and we drove straight to Jim Crockett Promotions. Met Jim Crockett, sat down with Dusty, and they hired me on the spot to take Dennis's spot with the Midnight Express. So I went from a great super tag team as the Fabulous Ones with Steve to another super great tag team with another great partner, Bob Eaton. So I've been truly blessed in the wrestling business.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Stan, I have a question. What was it like working with Steve and then Bobby?
Well, they're both great workers. I mean, they're a lot better than I was, to be honest with you. Steve had that great Florida style, tough, the amateur style, heavily the amateur wrestling, everything looks real, it looks legit. Bobby was, to me, one of the greatest punchers. I mean, he could throw a punch and not kill you. It wouldn't break an egg, but it looked like it took your head off. And Bobby's timing was just impeccable. He was, and of course, coming off the top rope. So they were both great workers in their own right.
Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
My question is for both of you. How did you first feel when you saw your first AWA Rimco action figures back in the day?
Yeah.
Hey, let me answer that. Remember Toys R Us? They had one in Minneapolis, and they told us we had action figures coming out, and I kept going there every day. You guys got wrestling action figures? And when they finally said yes, I go to the area where they were selling them. You know, they put that stuff on a long thing where it goes through that one little hole. I stuck my arms behind ours, and I put them all. And I put them in the basket, right? So then I go to the counter. And I'm putting them all up on the counter, and the guy's looking at me and goes, oh, big wrestling fan, huh? I said, no, that's me, man. And the guy looks at me, right? And then he looks at the figure, and then he looks at me again and says, that ain't you. And I go, bull. And I pull my driver's license out, and I showed him my driver's license to prove it was me. The thing about it was if you'd have told me don't open those, I'd have gone, why not? Because look at it now. The more valuable some of those figures are is unopened packages. I got 5 grandkids. My youngest is 6 right now. There's a drawer that he goes to, and he can pull out 5 or 6 Skinners and Fabulous Ones. Even the Road Warriors. I bought the Road Warriors so me could stand to beat the hell out of them.
That's the only way we could do it.
We tie a bootlace, one of our boots, untie it, tie it, and throw them out the window and drag their head. We beat them so bad. they don't look much like the Road Warriors now, but my grandkids played with all of these toys and everything. But if you to tell my 6-year-old grandson, hey Asher, you can't open this. What do you mean? It's not valuable if you open it 20 years from now. He goes, I ain't keeping that thing 20 years. Get this thing out of here. But that's, it's very unique. I was complimented and I was humbled because I didn't consider myself the icon wrestler. I considered myself a soldier. I was just another one of the soldiers in the army. And to have something like that and to be able to show your grandkids, what an honor. I mean, I'm still humble. A lot of fans have brought up stuff of different characters and things, and I'm looking at them and I'm going, wow, thanks. Somebody bought that. I mean, my grandson bought his first action figure Wednesday. And my wife brought him home. We were babysitting him, and I'll be damned, it's Hulk Hogan. and he doesn't even know anything about wrestling practically at that age. And I said, why'd you pick that one out? He says, well, I like these things. And it was the bows that went around his neck. And unfortunately, it's bad timing. The next day, of course, Terry died. But now he wants to collect action figures. Not once has he took Skinner out to beat up Hogan or anybody. I mean, I'm almost getting pissed at him. I keep saying, hey Asher, what about Big Daddy's action figures? I've had those since I was a baby. I want some new ones. And he wants Roman Reigns and who is the influencer guy? Logan Paul. And I go, how do you know him? He says, social media.
And he's 6?
He's 6. But when I took him to Royal Rumble, not this year, but last year, they had it in St. Pete. And I took him there, and Logan Paul come out to talk to everybody. And they had all the old timers in a suite. They had Hogan and me and Funk and Jerry Briscoe and Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo that you saw here. And the only one he wanted to talk to was Logan Paul. And I said, I don't even know who this jabroni is. I mean, there's Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre and Sheamus and all these guys, and he wants to talk to some guy I didn't even know. So anyway, but that's how it is. New faces, new kids, new era.
It tells you something about how goofy the world is when the best thing you can do with a toy now is not open it.
You know what? I still have young people come and they say, well, I heard you ran a developmental system. What would you suggest I should do to prepare if I wanted to become a professional wrestler? I said, get a social media following. If you have a lot of followers to you, they're going to look at you and consider taking you for the job. When I was running FCW, I had Ricky Steamboat's kids. They cut him. I had Barry Darso's kid, Dakota. They cut him. I had Jerry Briscoe's kid. They cut him. I mean, I had so many, Ted DiBiase, I had both of his boys. I mean, I had so many second generation wrestlers that just all of a sudden got cut. To me, it was politics. It was something that happened sometime. That somebody was pissed about somebody, and so they took it out on their kids. Because reality is they can make somebody anytime they want to. And they can make them just like they make movie stars. Tom Cruise was not a big famous movie star until he had enough of the right movies. And now he's a celebrity worldwide, and he's always in good movies. And you always think, oh, it's a Tom Cruise movie, Mission Impossible 975. Gotta be good. Gotta be good. So, how about questions? There's a question.
All the way from New Zealand.
Me? Yeah. Who are your favorite teams to work with? I know you work with a lot of people over the years, but who would you say your favorite?
I would say probably the Rock and Roll Express, because, I mean, we work with them, well, me and Steve, plus me and Bobby, work with them so much, and they're always a night off. You never hurt you, and they were so over, too. That helps when the teams are over, and the crowd's just deafening roar. screaming and stuff. And Ricky Morton probably is one of the greatest sellers when he's getting beat up. I mean, he could just bring a tear to a glass eye. You know, the people really felt that he was really getting hurt. He just, you know, reach out trying to tag Robert. You just see that the anguish in his face, and the people just, I mean, they were crying. And but I mean, they were great workers, and they were fun to wrestle, and they never hurt you.
I'd say Bobby Eaton and Coco Beware was my favorite, only because that I just loved working with Bobby Eaton. Coco was a really great worker too, but Bobby Eaton was the man. I mean, you know, and I seen him, and I knew he was really a tough guy, and that always impressed me. I'm impressed by legitimate, tough people, not amateur wrestlers turned professional or anything like that. But that silent, kind of quiet guy that sits in the dressing room and doesn't ever say anything, and you're always wondering, wonder how tough that guy is. I've seen him in action with marks coming from trying to get into the ring. I was hanging by my right arm. We did a deal where I hooked the top rope and the second rope and went over the top, and it caught my arm, so Bobby was hitting me with a chair. And I could see this guy, because I'm looking at the audience hanging by one arm, and I could see this guy running down the aisle. And I'm looking and I go, "Hey, pal," to Bobby. And he's looking at me and what? Says, "There's somebody running after you right now. Turn around." And Bobby saw the guy come over the rail. The guy took a big right-handed swing at Bobby. Bobby stiff-armed him, caught him by the throat, pulled his head back, and the guy missed him, and Bobby drilled him. I'm going, that was cool. You know, that was really cool.
You know, any last questions? Because this room is gonna have to be turned back for the banquet tonight. So, we're getting hey, you know, get out. Okay.
Yeah, the switch. When you guys do the switch, Stan will come out, Steve will come in. That's usually a masked bad guy tag team move. Who decided you guys should do that?
I'm not sure who exactly decided, but you know, he and I could do that because
Yeah.
we look so much alike. You know, we're about the same size, and at that time we both had dark beards and blonde hair about the same length, so it was just a perfect way to, you know, to do a cool move, and we looked like the same person in there.
It was just, it was so common, you know, and the whole time you're a wrestler, you're stealing moves from other people. And you see something you think you can do and get away with it. I mean, the masked guys can do it with their heads stuck up. But 99% of the time when we made the switch, we got in with our head down in the hole or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Question for Stan. Stan, do you regret leaving WCW with Jim Cornette back in 1990?
Yes and no. I mean, Bobby stayed and made good money, but I don't think he was really happy. And you know, money's not everything. And I had a very, very, very hard, you know, decision that night to make. But at that time, Jimmy and I were so frustrated and so over Jim Hurd screwing us around that we just, you know, some told me just go ahead and go. You know, don't worry about the money. You know, it's not all about the money. You know, there's a lot more important stuff in life. Just, you know, attempt to be happy. And I can tell you this: when Jimmy and I were driving back to Charlotte that night, we were so darn happy. It was unbelievable. I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off of me.
Last one, because we got yes, sir.
Over the years, did you reunite many times? I seem to remember that in the late 90s, I was watching Bert Prentice's promotion. I think it was Music City Wrestling, and you two had formed your team back again. I don't remember what the program was.
Yeah, we actually reunited, I think, around in the 90s at Louisville, Kentucky, a big match, and we're actually managed by Jim Cornette, and we were heels. We came back as heels because we kind of left as heels the second time, and then I think Bert Prentice booked us in Nashville, didn't he?
Yeah.
one time.
Well, Cornette was a manager for us.
That was in 91, USWA.
Okay. One thing I'd like to add to what Stan answered about why we kind of split up is I was trying to diversify in my life. I felt the time clock ticking. I started before Stan. I'm a few years older than Stan. And when I first started in wrestling, I wrestled guys old enough to be my grandpa. And I would ask them, you know, how did I do? What could I do better? And I always ask everyone, why are you still wrestling? You're a guy to be 60 or 70 years old. Why the hell are you still wrestling? And they'd say bad payoffs, too many wives, all kinds of reasons. But one thing that I committed myself to, I'm not going to be an old wrestler. When my time is done, my time is done. If I can't go out in front of an audience and do something I'm passionate about and give them 100% of it, you know, myself, and leave everything out there and just do everything I can to entertain them. If I'm going to go out there and skate and just argue with the fans or whatever, I don't have any business taking somebody else's spot. So I was working my way out of the business, and I didn't want to be an old guy going out there and, you know, people getting a different, you know, impression of me or whatever impression they had, it would be belittling it. And I, you know, I just said to myself, and I fell back on my word and did Skinner. And the reason I did Skinner is because all of a sudden now I'm an actor. I went from a real passionate territorial day to going to work for Vince. And Vince, when I went to Vince and said, hey, I don't know what you want me to be. I just killed 15 alligators. Maybe that's a good idea. And he said, I'll hire you right now. I'm going, yeah. And you can go home for a month, just get your hair to a natural brown, and let your beard grow. And I'm going, hey, all right, you're going to pay me to go home? And he's going, yeah. And I'm going, yeah, that's my job. I went home and I came back and he said, you see the movie Deliverance? And I go, yeah, I sure have. And I was sucking up to him so bad. I mean, it was stupid suck up. I'm going, I saw it at least 100 times, Vince, Mr. McMahon. I wanted a job, right? And he's going, I want you to be one of those guys. And I'm going, gotta be Burt Reynolds, right? I said, I was pretty. I was just in a Chippendale dancer with the fabulous ones. I gotta go from that to Burt Reynolds at least. And Vince looks at me and goes, nah, not that guy. I want you to be one of the two guys in the woods with Ned Beatty. That's, hey boy, you got a right pretty mouth. But when I started doing promos, my promos as a baby face were the drizzling. It was horrible. It was like watching paint dry. You know, he wouldn't sell a ticket on my interviews, but when I got to be Skinner, now I'm not me. I'm not Steve Kerr. I'm an alligator poacher from the Everglades. And the newest thing they had was a shield on the interview camera. So instead of, if you ever watched old filming and stuff where people would glance their eyes off to the side, to a monitor, see how they're looking, they'd be talking to them. They look over here, it's right there. And I'm looking at myself, and I'm doing everything I can to keep from laughing and looking at myself. But it was, I could do faces, and if I got confused, I could just start laughing. And I was a heel, and it was the easiest thing. And then, when I went out and worked, the first match I had, Vince calls me over, hey, come here. He says, what the hell was that? I said, that was a wrestling match. And he goes, you're an alligator poacher out of the Everglades. How do you know a fireman carrying and go behind takedown? And well, you wrestle just like Bret Hart. And I said, well, what do you want? He says, I want you to retard your wrestling down to 0 and just be a brawler. And I'm going, no more bumps, huh? And so it was easy. But I had a lot of fun being that guy, whether he got famous or not. He was a lot of fun. Anyway,
All right, this, we gotta turn it back to the back, getting ready for tonight's banquet, because Marty comes in and when he starts rocking back and forth, that tell. Yeah. We got to rock and then we got to talk. So give it up, thank you so much. Thank you guys. Nice to meet you.